We're gonna get started on some tips on how you can go ahead and have all of this application process, all of this facilitated, as well as record keeping for this loan, also for federal annual income tax purposes, how you can go ahead and get some tips to facilitate the reporting of your business and business transactions. Now, I always love to give an example so we can go over these tips. Now, Miss Gloria, she is a single owner, a sole proprietor of her restaurant, which she has been able to maintain open for the last 10 years. Now, it is almost the end of the year. It's actually already been the end of the year, and the income tax season is here. So, income tax, we know it's a lot of sometimes very stressful to have all of the documents, all of the reports, all of the info that needs to be ready to be submitted. Now, what are the things she asks that she needs to keep in mind on her if she's going to be applying for that second wave of PPP loans? Now, all of these tax reports, all of these books to start off do need to be updated up until this day. Why? Because all of this information is going to be just very, very necessary to be able to submit and properly fill out the application for this PPP loan. So tip number 10, we start off on 10. Now, that is a very important tip, which is to create a different bank account. It is important to always separate your business transactions as well as your personal transactions. That's what we always recommend for a business owner, to not use the same bank account for business and business and personal purposes. Always have them separated. Have a separate bank account for your business, and do not use that bank account, the money in that bank account, for any personal uses. It is just not accepted for any fraud to the IRS. That is not accepted, and as well as for PPP loan applications, SBA, that is also not accepted. Why? Because whenever these expenses are mixed in the same bank account. Let's say if you use the same bank account, your personal one, and in that bank account you have all of the business transactions, all of the business deposits. If they're all being deposited on that same bank account, that creates a lot of hassle, a lot of trouble, especially when it comes to annual reporting. It is just very difficult to be able to identify which expense was used for business use and what exactly it was used for if it was a business expense. That's why it is just very important that you separate them. Now, also, if you do get a loan of the PPP, it is also important to not mix it in. So we always recommend the same thing, to always open another bank account just for PPP loan purposes. Why is this going to be important? Because it's also going to facilitate. If you have the bank funds there, it's going to be able to tell you where these funds are being used. If you're expending them, let's say if you're having expenses for your business, if you have to pay the rent, the light, the water, the Wi-Fi, any utilities, and you're using the money of that loan. And if you have a separate bank account, then it's very easy to see where you're using those loan funds for. You're able to see on this day, I spent $300 on my light bill. The next day, I went ahead and paid some printers that I had to use for my office. That's where I spent this loan at. As you see, it is just very, very easy. It's going to speed up the whole process of recording, of having everything categorized exactly where you use these loans funds for. Why it's going to be very important to be able to separate them is not only for at the end of the year when you're reporting for income tax purposes, so you don't include the loan there, but also if you're going to do the follow-up application, let's say PPP loan forgiveness application, you have everything ready already there in one bank account, in one bank statement, easily for you to be able to use that data and to be able to input it on the follow-up applications. It just, in the end, simply means you should avoid mixing all of these transactions within just one bank account. Number 9, it is to automate accounting processes. You should always consider the best accounting technique for you and your business. If it means getting a different accounting software, maybe getting the very first accounting software, if you're using it the old-fashioned way, doing a recording on paper with a pen, having all of the receipts and reports there. It may be already time to get or to upgrade to an accounting software. Why do we say this? It's because this accounting softwares just vastly facilitate all of the processes of not only record keeping, but also of getting the reports ready. These reports, let's say an annual profit and loss, a balance sheet, a cash flow statement, these are just a very necessary, they're very important because a lot of, let's say a lender, a bank, another third-party lender, the IRS, those are the ones that they are going to accept. So this accounting software just greatly facilitates all of that processes. It's going to be pretty much almost automated, especially if you get this accounting software. Now, number 8, and it's kind of like a follow-up to number 9, it is to hire an expert, somebody that has an experience, an accounting expert that has experience in not only annual tax reporting, but also in accounting software process and use of it. You should consider hiring a professional, let's say a bookkeeper or a third-party accountant, even if it is not permanent. Maybe getting hiring them or not hiring them, but getting them as a contract labor, a third party, not an employee, but again, as an independent contractor, you will be able to, of course, receive their experience, their, let's say, guidance on where you can go ahead and categorize certain expenses. Let's say if you have questions, how it is it that I can do a record keeping of this new insurance that I have for my company. Well, that third party, that experienced accountant can go ahead and help you be able to, of course, categorize them. If you hire them, they can even help you, let's say, in your record keeping. If you upgrade to that accounting software, they can also help you out in that matter. So they will just, again, beside the new software, if you do get it and you're not very experienced, you want to hire somebody that does have experience with it to go ahead and save you the time to do that. You can hire an expert bookkeeper or an accountant, so they can also do the record keeping, classify all these loan expenditures, especially for PPP. It is important that you have all of these classified, categorized as use of these loan funds. Always just a quick tip, it's just very reliable. Get one that is very reliable, that you either know from, that you've heard of, maybe somebody recommended to you, somebody that you can trust, so they can go ahead and have these business transactions always categorized correctly. Now, number 7 is to review your PPP records regularly. Very, very important to review them. Go back to them, revise them, make sure that everything is correct. You should always analyze your PPP loan amount statement, either regularly, weekly, every in the middle of the week and at the end of the week. So you can go ahead and make sure that everything is at least, calm. Nothing jumps up, maybe a big transaction that you don't really remember. It's always that you regulate it, reconcile it regularly. Try to discover where there are any red flags or everything is good to go. If possible, also analyze this one daily. Let's say, for example, you make a lot of transactions in one day, follow up the next day. That's usually, they take about a business day for the bank transaction or the bank statement to show them. Let's say in the online portal for your bank. You can go ahead and review them. Make sure that everything that is in your bank statement really was used for your, let's say, by yourself or by your business. Make sure that everything that there appears is correct. So it's always important not only to record the first time, but also review it, reconcile it, make sure that everything is correct the second time. Now, number 6 is to track every expense. Again, this goes back, it's kind of like a follow-up to tip number 7. Financial experts always advise you to label and categorize all the expenses. Make sure label and categorize them correctly. And keep track of this cash flow. Make sure how much money is coming out. Where are these expenses coming from? If you see the bank statement, you don't recollect or you don't remember where exactly this expense came from. That's why keeping track closely on these expenses in the shortest amount of time, let's say in the middle of the week, at the end of the week, or even daily, it is just very, very important. So you don't lose track of where these expenses came from. You always know how much money is coming in on the daily, how much is coming out. You have pretty much a good budget a good forecast of where it is that these funds are going to last you for. Uh, Especially this accounting software is going to help you out greatly. It is very hard to do this, or maybe time consuming to do it by hand, how much expenses you're going to be coming in the next coming weeks, how much of the funds you're going to have left. So that's where these keeping track of them on a daily basis would be very, very helpful for you to know how much money you have left for this loan, how much it's going to last you for this loan, all the expenses that you thought you're going to be able to cover with this loan. Is this, as you get, within the days, is this still possible? Do I need to make some adjustments? Maybe need to cut back on some expenses. Maybe I have some more money coming in. Maybe I can do some more investments, some more expenses to facilitate or to improve my business. This is where keeping track of the statements and keeping track of all of the expenses are gonna go ahead and benefit you very, very greatly. Okay, now tip number 5. Let me go to the next one. Understand how to manage any leftover money. This is very, very important for PPP loan purposes. There are some circumstances where you may receive an extra PPP loan amount than it is needed. In such situation, it is just important to know how it is that you can use this extra amount, this leftover amount of funds, so you can go ahead and benefit from it. Now, we all know that this PPP loan, it is very, very good, not only because it is money pretty much fast, it's a quick turnaround time from the application, but also because this loan can also be eligible for forgiveness, just depending on where this loan funds are used. Okay, so we all know that if you do get it forgiven, you don't have to pay it back. It is essentially free money, free capital for your business, so you can go ahead and maintain operations, improve operations maybe for your business. But also, if you have an excess, maybe you won't have enough of expenses to go ahead and have it eligible for forgiveness. So that's where these several tips are going to come in handy, where it is that you can go ahead and use this leftover money so you can still be eligible for the forgiveness. Always remember that there is a rule of 60-40. 60% of the PPP has to be used for payroll expenses for you to even be eligible to submit the application. The other 40% can be used for other operating expenses. It can be used for rent, for utilities like the light bills, the water bills, maybe even internet, depending on your business, what it does as a service or as a sales, depending on the business. And also just make sure that the other 40% is used all the operating expenses. This is where this leftover money can be used. Make sure that it's just important to keep track, again, on your bank. If you made a separate bank account for your PPP loan, it is important that you keep track of it, how much money you have left, because you want to go ahead and, of course, be eligible. As much as I want to reiterate to you, be eligible for that loan forgiveness. So you're kind of free of having money that you owe. You're free of debt, free of this loan that you have to repay. Just manage your loan funds properly, accordingly, so you can go ahead and have this leftover money, anything that you got over and the excess of the application, you can use it wisely, like I said, for operating expenses that are only for your business. Again, only for your business. This loan is for business use, for business purposes only. Remember, the main focus of this PPP loan is to keep employees so they can continue to have a payroll. We all know this pandemic has affected each business differently. Some had to close temporarily. Some, unfortunately, had to shut their doors forever. But the business is to keep the employees of these businesses for them to have a payroll, to have a means so they can continue to bring food to their home, all of that, to maintain their families. So this PPP loan has to be used for employees, as well as some has to be used, of course, 60-40, 40% has to be used for business purposes only. So just make sure you don't use any of these funds, say for personal uses, for your personal mortgage. You don't make a big payment for your personal mortgage. This loan is just for business use only. Now, tip number 4 is to separate your business ventures. Always, always, always. As you may be aware, the loan forgiveness is not in any way taxable. So always, always keep them separate, especially if you don't make a separate bank account. If you have the loan deposit into your regular business account in that same account, you get all of these sales deposited there. Any service deposits are deposited into that same bank account to be able to tell which one or the amount of what you have in the bank was for the loan. If you have it forgiven, always remember that it is not taxable income. Even though it is a deposit into your bank, it's not going to be taxable. That's why it is very important to separate them, because you don't want to report on the annual federal tax report that you lose track of how much you received on this loan and it's on that same bank account. So you use that bank account, the number that you have there, to report onto your revenue or to your sales. And therefore, if you do this incorrectly, you're going to end up getting taxed by it. That's why it's important to always separate them. Know how much of the loan is in your bank. But again, if you do separate them for the bank account, use a separate bank account to deposit the loan funds. That's just what it's just going to make everything so much easier, so much simpler. You don't have to go back and separate them to report on the annual tax reports. You can have all of this pretty much all set up if it's reported accordingly from the very first day. So these tips, of course, are to have you ready for this annual report for the PPP. If you're going to make the application. Also how to use these funds, and also for the annual tax reporting. You don't want to go ahead and get taxed. You don't want to pay more tax than you should have. That is just not a very tax-friendly way for businesses. Just remember, always keep these deposits separate. Number 3 is to store your records safely. Always have these receipts, these expense reports, any reports, bank statements that you have, always record them, store them away safely in a way that you can always be able to get them back. Let's say, for example, if you are asked to present these reports, let's say to the lender, if you're going to make this application for PPP, once you submit the application, if they do want to see any of, let's say, the receipts to prove that you have so much of the expenses, then that's when these receipts and reports are gonna be very needed. Why? Because they can always ask for proof, evidence, where it is that you use this money. So always keep track of them. The very safest way is, like I said, to have a bank account, because all of the transactions that you have, if you have a separate bank account for the loan funds and you use that account to use the money for the loan, you spend it on all of the business related expenses, then that bank statement is going to have pretty much all that you need. It's going to have where you spend the money. So that's the easiest way that you can have the record keeping. Bank statements are always going to be accepted by federal agencies. So that's how the easiest way that I can tell you that you can keep track of these. Some of them though, I know that, let's say for example, you write a check from the bank account. On the bank statement, it may say check number 121, but it won't say exactly what you used this for. So I just encourage you to keep a copy of that receipt that you wrote. If you use it for the rent, then go ahead and keep a copy of that receipt, of that check, so you can go ahead and store it and have it ready in case it is necessary for you to present these receipts. Remember that all businesses are required to maintain their accounting records. Note, you should not only store records, but also be able to explain the recorded transaction. This is another example. To explaining these transactions, keep all these receipts. Make sure that you, especially if you're able to keep track of them on the daily or maybe on the semi-weekly, like in between the weeks, if you can go ahead and revise them, you're able to know exactly where these expenses come from. Because trust me, if you're keeping track of them, let's say once at the end of the month, it is sometimes very difficult to remember exactly where these expenses came from. You may not remember the $257, where did I spend that? Another $637, where did I spend that? It is just difficult to try and remember everything at once when you try to record it, or try to remember it once at the end of the month. So revising it, going over it a lot more often is always just very recommended for your record keeping. Now, tip number 2 is always to consider using a payroll service. Remember, 60% of this PPP loan amounts of this loan has to be used for an employee if you're considering to go ahead and submit that application for the loan forgiveness. So if you are still doing it yourself, maybe you're writing checks, you're not doing it correctly, or you think you're having some issues on how to go ahead and withhold the correct tax amount, deposit that same correct tax amount with the IRS, always consider using a payroll service. If you're looking to manage your bookkeeping, your payroll, all of these other transactions, it can be sometimes very overwhelming, especially for a lot of business owners, because of course, your main goal is your clients, your sales. Try to have your clients happy, try to make some sales, provide the services so you can collect that income. That is your main focus probably as a business owner, to expand your business. All of these other little ticky-tacky but still essential things like it is record keeping, very, very crucial. It is very, like I said, it can be a headache, but it is just essential. It has to be done. Bookkeeping, payroll services. You may want to consider getting a payroll service, a third-party one. Why? So they can go ahead and use their time. You don't have to use your time, have your stress. They can go ahead and have their experience. They can go ahead and do all of that. To use the payroll, especially because in the months that we live right now in this current pandemic, it is just very important to have all of these records always correctly organized and done, so you can go ahead and alleviate yourself to maybe seeing any possible penalties or any possible interest fines just because you are not keeping track of everything correctly. So support payroll amounts using external payroll providers together with bank statements, which will show transactions and any expenses used out of your PPP loan amounts. So it is just very important. The easiest way that it is for you and your business is going to be just the more convenient in the very end. Sometimes you may even save money by contracting the independent accountant. You may save money even if you pay him than paying any penalties or fines. It is just going to go ahead and save some money for you and also save some time from you, save some stress for yourself. Tip number one is to set up proper controls. Why do I say this? It's because your business financial information is just very sensible data, very, very crucial data to keep track of only by you, the business owner, or other people that you trust within your business. Let's say your CFO, other managers. Always keep track of who can go ahead and have access to these sensitive data. So set up proper controls. Financial experts always advise you to employ proper accounting controls to get rid of any frauds. If it is necessary, maybe the authorization, there's a very common two-way authorization method so you can have access to these funds, to this data. Or other is to just to simply set up a PIN password if you're gonna have access to this sensible data. Let's say bank account, credit cards, online banking, or to your accounting software. Make sure you have all of these passwords, these controls properly set up, so it just minimizes any fraud opportunities, okay? This is something that we do not want for your business to, at the end, present in the annual reports any information that is not correct, and therefore you run the risk of always an audit, not only by the IRS but other agencies. So it is just important that you have all of these set up, all these controls up to date, so you have only the proper personnel have access to these funds. These are the tips that we have for the PPP loan, and also how to have everything set up for the annual tax reporting.
There you go.
Always.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Juan. Then now this is where we are going to jump in the current latest news on the second wave. The very first thing, one of the frequently asked questions that we're handling for the clients that we're working with is what is the 40-60 rule and the 25% rule? And does it apply for the first time that we'll get the PPP?
Okay, yes, that's a good question. Remember, if you have the PPP loan and you're interested in having it forgiven, just make sure that you use this loan accordingly. From the start, I know that the SBA, the main purpose of the PPP is to pay the employees. So at least 60% of the loan has to be used as payroll or to pay your employees, any payroll related expenses. Meaning that, for example, if you did receive a PPP loan of $10,000, 60% of it has to be used for payroll. In this example, $10,000 loan, $6,000 has to be used to pay employees. So you can at least be eligible to have this loan forgiveness application submitted and accepted. The other 40% can be used for other operating expenses, any rent, any utilities as it is in water or any printer. If you do these, if you use this loan funds accordingly in 60/40, you are already pretty much qualified to submit this application. Now, on the 25, if you did receive the very first PPP loan and you are interested in getting a second PPP loan, this is where the 25% rule comes to play for you and your business. In order to be eligible for a second PPP loan, you have to have used the first PPP loan amount entirely. So all the money that they gave you on the first PPP loan, you must have used it already. You don't necessarily have to fill out the PPP forgiveness application, but just as long as you use the whole money that they lend you on the first PPP loan, that is where you're at least or meet one of the requirements to be eligible for the second PPP loan. Another requirement for the second PPP loan is you must show that you have a loss of at least 25%. At least a 25% loss of sales or a gross income when you compare year 2020 to 2019. So an example is if you have sales in 2019 of $100,000, you have to have a loss of 25% of that. So if in 2020 now you only have income or sales of $70,000, you're able to prove that, then that's where you meet this 25% rule. So again, this 25% rule is that you have to show that you have a loss of at least 25% of gross income when you compare 2020 to 2019. This is again, if you're gonna get that second PPP loan.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. That is a very good point. And the 25%, just for clarification, are for people or for business owners who are applying for the second round of PPP. Correct, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, but yeah, you know what we've been encountered from time to time, there are more self-employed. They don't have employees. What is the document that they need? So for example, they used $10,000 last year. They get approved for the first wave of $10,000 for the payroll. What is the document they have to provide that they use the money as payroll for themselves? Can they issue a check for themselves?
Okay, that's another very good question, because not only do businesses with employees, not only them, they can get this PPP, but also any business can. If you are self-employed, you don't have any employees that work for your business, then you can still meet or receive this PPP loan funds. Now, if you are able to, what are going to be needed first to get this PPP loan, if you're an independent contractor with no employees, or you are a business LLC with no employees, you will have to submit your latest income tax report. If it is the 2020, if you have that one already filed, that one is going to be used. If not, they're going to use the latest one. In this case, the 2019, if you have it. If you do use the 2019 income tax report, then it is also going to be necessary to have an updated profit and loss report for year 2020. All of the income that you received in 2020, as well as all of the expenses, and these expenses categorized. If you're going to submit the PPP loan application, those are for self-contract, independent contractors. Now, if they did receive the PPP loan funds and if they're interested or they want to submit the PPP application, remember 60% has to be used for payroll. So you can go ahead, if you have a separate bank account for your business or a separate bank account for the PPP loan funds, you can always write yourself a check from that separate bank account. Write a check, deposit it into your personal bank account. There you have in black and white an actual trail of where you use these funds. So you can use that bank statement where it says that you wrote yourself a check. You have it in black and white where you use this fund to pay yourself. This is how you can go ahead and prove that you use 60% for payroll costs, because you are considered, if you don't have employees, you, the sole owner, the subcontractor, you are considered to be the only employee for PPP loan purposes. So write yourself, if you don't have a separate bank account, this is why we encourage you to create that second bank account so you have that trail in the end.
Yes, and that's why we do encourage, when I used to work an audit before, always remember the two rules. Rule number one, document. Rule number two, do not forget rule number one. That's why we do encourage not to withdraw cash from the bank. You need to have a check. Okay? If it's cash, it's very intangible. We don't know where do you use it. We don't know where that money went. That's why it's very important. Document, document, document. Now we will go to the different questions from our audience today. Number one, I know we have Kimberly. This is the question. According to Kimberly, I have Chase for my PPP loan. I did not get in my request for forgiveness in before the end of the year, mainly because of Chase either not taking applications or them constantly changing the requirements. Kimberly, I feel that it is not isolated case. They keep changing the requirements. Now, the question of Kimberly is, how do I report this on my 2020 business tax return?
Okay, so yes, unfortunately, they kept changing for several months last year, the requirements, how you can get it forgiven or who can be eligible. They kept changing every month. So maybe the bank, that's why they did not accept these applications, because they were constantly changing. Now, for at least income tax purposes, any loan amounts that you did receive, they're not going to be taxable. So that's why it's important to always separate the loan amounts that you did receive. If you get them deposited to the same business bank account, then you separate them from all of the other business income. So you don't, incorrectly, by mistake, report an incorrect income for the year of 2020. In the end, any loan that you did receive, even if you don't get it forgiven, or if you do get it forgiven, it is not considered taxable income. You don't have to report it on the income line for your business tax return. So it will be excluded from any tax. So to save yourself all of this, let's say hassle, or you don't want to go ahead and go keep track of how much is actual income, how much is not income, because some of it is the business loan. Go ahead and deposit it to a different bank account. But you don't have to report this for income tax reasons, at least for income. So it won't be considered taxable. So let's not, incorrectly report it like that. We don't want you to pay more taxes than you should have in the end.
But for example, that's a good point that it's not a taxable income, but can they use this as a deduction on their tax return? So for example, $10,000, he used 6,000 to pay himself, or 4,000 is the expenses to others for operating costs. How is that going to be treated in terms of deductions?
Yes. So there any expense that you used in order to qualify for the forgiveness, let's say, like Christopher just said, if you use $4,000, or in my example, $6,000 to pay employees, if you use that $6,000 to get your loan forgiven, you can still use it for income tax purposes. So before, going back to how the SBA and the IRS were changing all of these rules, before, you couldn't double dip. So if you use expenses for PPP forgiveness, you cannot use them again for a deduction for income tax purposes. But they did already get rid of that restriction. So this new COVID relief plan that was signed by the president, it did override that ruling. So any expenses that you use for PPP forgiveness, any expenses that you had to incur on year 2020, can and should be used again for any deductions for income tax filing, especially if, again, Kimberly, in your example, if you haven't gotten forgiven, if you are already making payments to repay this loan, remember that some of those payments are going to be for interest, some of them are going to be for the principal. So any payments for interest, those are also going to be tax deductible. They're an interest expense. So just keep track of that. If you are already paying back this PPP loan, remember all of the deductions that you should use as a deduction. It's just a way that you can save your money, or at least a way that you can, properly file income tax reports to have the most benefit for you and your business.
Yes, thank you. Now, thank you, Kimberly, for that question. Another we have from Avi. I started my small business last year. Can I still apply for the PPP loan? And please guide how and where. In other words, when are the business owner be qualified? If they started December or they started before October, what is the start date for them to apply?
So Abby, that's a good question. So there is actually a date where your business must have already been open. It must have already been, registered or been operating. So any business had to be open before February the 15th of year 2020. If your business was open before then, earlier before that date, then you can go ahead and apply for this PPP loan. Your business is eligible. So that's one of the dates that is required. And it was, of course, set on the rules from the beginning for this PPP loan. Any business that was started after that, unfortunately, it won't be eligible for this PPP loan. So they will ask, especially when you make this application, for any registration records. If you got to register as an LLC, they will ask for the Secretary of State official stamp and the official date where it was registered. If you have, for example, if you're a sole proprietor, it's not registered as an LLC, it must have been started before February 15, 2020. So if you have the latest 2019 income tax report, if it is reported on that Schedule C, self-employment, then there is a proof that it was already open and operating before that official date of February the 15th of 2020. So that is just a very crucial date. February 15, 2020, where your business must have been open or operating before that date, so you can be able to apply for this PPP loan.
Thank you. And by the way, according to Abby, how can she apply? Can she do it online?
Yes, so there are some applications, some portals, especially the bank applications. If you have your business bank, you can make this application online. They will always, because I have seen on bank accounts or online banking, sorry, getting mixed up, online banking, where they have, when you open it, in the very top is going to say your PPP application is ready to start. So banks are very good at that. They're trying to facilitate this. If you do it not through your bank, maybe you do it through another bank where you normally don't do business. Some banks will accept some applications if you do not currently have an account with them, but that is to the discretion of that separate bank. There are also some third-party lenders that will also be able to give you this PPP loan application, but it will have to be through them. So for the most part, these applications can be submitted online, but just talk to that lender, to the bank especially. If you have close communication with your business bank, make sure to ask the way, because some will allow online, some will have to be submitted by paper. Not necessarily by paper, it can be typed online, fill out the application online, and then submitted via email or submitted through an online portal online. So there are different ways where you can submit this PPP application. It's not just restricted to one.
Yes, and also the follow-up question from Abby. We still have 10 minutes for all the questions. Could you also please suggest, according to Abby, any accounting software? She was thinking into it, but if you have another suggestion, would that be great? But before you answer that, I'd like to acknowledge the answer of Listen Fang. I use Intuit. According to Listen, I use Intuit online payroll. For my small business with 2 employees, it works well because it depends on how many employees you have. For he's using it, it's about $70 per month. Do you have any other payroll, or is this accounting software that you suggest aside from Intuit?
I mean, all these softwares, at least the ones that come up to my mind, the very first one is Intuit. It is very good at having all of this ready, especially reporting. It is very good at that. Intuit. You can have QuickBooks Online, which is one that is pretty much blossoming. It's having a lot of additional ways that you can use this QuickBooks Online. The QuickBooks Desktop is also very helpful. Both of them will have everything necessary to submit even this PPP application through their QuickBooks. As long as you know it's registered your business with the EIN number, all of the information for your business, employees, it can even be submitted through them. So it is very helpful in that way. Also other payroll records or payroll softwares that I have seen that also are very good are Gusto. It's also another payroll service that also can be used to get all of the information and have the documents ready for this PPP. But on my end, I would again recommend, because I've used it, Intuit. It will have a lot of easy accesses, so you can have all of these reports, payroll reports, other expense reports, and even the application, the PPP application, filled out and submitted via them. So that I would recommend Intuit. But again, it doesn't necessarily have to be the desktop or the online. Either of them can work for you depending on the amount of employees that you have and the size of your business, really.
Thank you for that question, Abby. It's a side note about Listen Fang. She's asked, the question is, how can I sign up for a Score Tax Pro mentor? I would answer that definitely. And where can I find out this info? At the end of this presentation, but if you're looking on the slides closely, there's a website on the left lower that says score.org. And at this presentation, at the very end, there's a contact number and email address where you could actually inquire to find the right score mentor for you. All right, moving on. Another question. Let me see. So according to Mimi Curbs from California, I use Intuit QuickBooks Online $40 per month access fee, so my accountant or bookkeeper can access and keep the accounting books. Thank you for that suggestion. Michelle, this is another question, very interesting from Michelle. If the PPP loan amount was based on 10 employees, will forgiveness be granted only if we continued with 10 employees? What if we only have 5 that return to work? That's a very interesting question, Michelle.
Yes, it is. So Michelle, to answer your question, so the PPP forgiveness, if you want to be forgiven in full, you do have to maintain the same amount of employees. That's if you want to get it forgiven in full. Now, if you don't have the same amount of employees, you have less, like in your example, now you will have partial of it forgiven, but not the whole amount. So some of the PPP loan won't be forgiven. Why? Because of the amount of employees. Since you have less employees now than when you made the application or when you received the PPP, this is where not the whole 100% of the loan is going to be forgiven. There is, I don't want to say the exact amount, like in a percentage. I don't want to say 50 of it. Since you only have 50% of employees, only 50% of your loan is going to be forgiven. The number will vary, but not the full amount of your PPP loan will be forgiven. So in any application for the forgiveness, it does ask you how many employees you had whenever you made the application and how many employees you had when you made the PPP application and how many employees you have when you're making the forgiveness application, which is at the end of the PPP. So this number is going to go ahead and play a factor on how much of your loan is going to be forgiven. Not the full amount, but yes, a partial amount of your loan will be forgiven. Of course, if you at least go back to the numbers, 60% of the loan has to be used for payroll. That is the magic number. 60% has to be used for payroll in order for you to, or for your application to even qualify for forgiveness. That is
Right.
the magic number.
Yes. Thank you for that question, Michelle. Now for Mimi Curbs of Los Altos, California. The first time I did not include paying myself as the business owner. My business is set up as LLC. For PPP round, second wave, can you tell me, Juan, how I would calculate the amount I would eligible to pay myself? What report in QuickBooks do I need to use?
Okay, so how how you'll calculate how much you'll be able to pay yourself. Well, if you are an LLC and you're a sole proprietor and you're gonna be paying yourself, there's some rules on that, how you can pay yourself if you are the business owner. There's some IRS rules how you have to be treated. So it's just important that you go over that one first. The second one, how much you can pay yourself, is if you're the business owner, you're pretty much considered a manager. So you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. It cannot be something very minimal, let's say $8 or a minimal wage, because managers, an average manager salary is not minimum wage. So you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. You can pay yourself once a month salary manager, or even semi-weekly. It doesn't matter how often you pay yourself, but you do have to pay yourself a reasonable salary if you're gonna be considered of course, the business owner, gonna be the manager. Now,
Or,
how to
Mhm.
report it on QuickBooks? You have to, of course, use the same the same payroll tax reports have to be used. You're going to be taxed in the same amount. And for PPP loan purposes, if you are the only employee, then you would use how much of salary you pay yourself. Again, keep in mind, they use the monthly average payroll for the business. If it's you and other employees, they'll use the average monthly payroll. All the employees put together, they're gonna give approximately 3 months of that for the PPP loan amount. So it is important that if you're gonna first pay yourself the very first time as an employee, that you do pay yourself a reasonable salary. It just depends what kind of a business and where it is that you're located, because some states may vary.
Yes. All right. There you go. Thank you for that question. We still have 5 minutes. For Miss Mirna, I don't specifically, I'm trying to understand that the B of A required my 2020 Schedule C. I would get back to that question, or maybe it's just a statement. Can you please elaborate what is that for? Now with Lee Sin Fang, my PPP second wave was not approved, but I met both criterias, at least 25% reduced revenue, and have used all PPP on the first round fund already. 60% to paycheck and 40% to eligible business expenses. Why do you think, or what is the reason that it was not approved? That is the question from Lee Sin Fang.
Okay, leasing. So uh, there should have what's it called, let you know the reason why you were not approved. Sometimes I have seen that not all of the, even if you have used all of the first PPP loan in its entirely, if you have used it correctly with the 60/40, and you do have a 25%, it may be that maybe not all of the reports were submitted. That can be one of the reasons. But always keep in mind that you are not limited to only one PPP application. You can submit a second one if you did not get accepted the first time. It can be maybe with a different lender, a different bank. This is where it's always important to keep in mind you are not limited to only one application. You can submit more than one. Just keep in mind why it is that you were not accepted on this initial application that you're saying. It may be, like I said, a report was missing, or maybe some of the information that was inputted in the application is not the same as it was when you reported on the last year's income tax. Keep in mind that the SBA is also a federal agency, so they also have access to your business tax returns. If they see that the numbers are just way off or something like that, something that to them, to their eyes, does not appear correct, they will not go ahead and accept it and process it. But they will go ahead and contact you. If they haven't, please contact them. I would advise you, so you can know exactly why it is that that initial application was not accepted. But always keep in mind, you can submit another application to another lender.
There you go. Thank you. Now to Kim Daly, or in regards to payroll for myself, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. In regards to payroll for myself, I do an account transfer from business account to my personal. So what she's doing, instead of issuing a check, she's doing bank transfer from the business account to her personal account. Is that okay rather than a check? I have my bank statements for my documentation.
Okay, so you have your bank statements for your documents. So this is where it may go ahead and run into some more trouble, not some more trouble, but just into some trouble, because some of these transfers sometimes are viewed the same as withdrawals, as cash withdrawals. It is not there written how it is or how you use this money. It's just on the statement going to appear as a transfer out. So this may be viewed as just an owner's withdrawal of money, not necessarily a payroll or a paycheck written to yourself as the business owner. This is why, again, I would recommend to write yourself a check. Why? Because that check is going to be pretty much printed on the bank statement. It's going to have the date, and the reason why this expense was brought up, where you use this money, it's going to be written. It can be written as payroll expense or a manager payroll, something that is written exactly. Because sometimes on the bank statements, it will appear just transfer to this account on this other bank, and it won't appear really how it is that you use this money. So again, on the bank, on the written checks is the number one, what's it called? The number one
Document.
way that you can pay yourself. I'm sorry, I ran that word ran out of my head. So the number one way is that you write yourself a check. Any cash withdrawals sometimes maybe use the same as the bank transfers. Bank transfers. So always keep in mind the easiest way is to write yourself an actual check.
Yes, thank you for that question, Miss Kim. This is our final question for this webinar from Michelle. When filing 2020 taxes, is the PPP money recorded as a loan?
Okay, so this PPP loan amounts, it is considered a loan until you get it forgiven. So if you have not gotten it forgiven, it is considered still a loan. So I have noticed that some of the, especially on tax preparation, there's some entities that they do require for you to go ahead and write down or to record all of the assets that the company has and all of the liabilities that the company also has. So it is important to always keep track of them. Some of them, for some reports, depending on how much income your entity had, some of them, it is not required to submit all of this data. But if you do meet the requirement, you have to submit it. Then that's where this PPP loan, it does have to be at least inputted as a loan amount. It's not going to be taxed. Again, it's not going to be taxable. If you get the loan or if you get the loan forgiveness, it won't be taxable. But if you do meet the requirement for income tax filing and you do have to state the amount of assets that you have, the amount of liabilities and owner's equity that your business does have in its books, then this PPP loan is considered a loan and will have to be inputted in the loan column for the business's income tax filing. So just keep that in mind.
Yes, thank you for that, Juan. And we don't have enough time for today, but this is thank you for all the questions. And this is my intake about this on our experience for the past so many years. I'm dealing. IRS regulations are really, really different from this SBA regulations. That's why this can be very, very overwhelming for everyone, and even us, because it keeps changing almost every 2 months or 3 months. We just have to adapt. Is this overwhelming? What can you do? I know it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for us. How much more for you guys? So this is what you can do. They said to Steve Jobs that great things in business are never done by one person. They are done by a team of people. That's why there's resources that you can find on the provided here on the link. All you have to do is open them and visit them. But of course, if you cannot, you always have a score mentor. But like what I have said, this is not a one size fits all approach. If you have a reliable accountant, tax professional, bookkeeper, payroll for the past years that you've been using, consult to them first. But if you cannot access or contact them, go to the score mentor. Take advantage of this free service in order to make the best possible decision about your business. Going to the previous question, this is the website where you can find the mentor on the score.org, find mentor. The good thing about this, you can review the bios and request a free appointment with a mentor of your choice. That's why on my company, on my business, I really highly approve, because a lot of consultant will charge you what, $2,000 every month. But this one, I was able to have, or no, I'm not. I still have them. I have 8 the best people I've ever met and taking my business to the next level, because you have to collaborate and find the most experience in the field that you want to talk to. Please, another question or another favor is please we are requesting an online review. Thank you for attending our class. If you have any issues with our class or score, you are welcome to email at workshop at svs or workshop at svscore.org. If you believe that we have helped you in any way, please write a review on Google. This will help other entrepreneurial organizations find us and receive much more benefits. Score mentors near me, you just do Google search. And today, we are your presenter. Of course, I'm again Mr. Christopher Y. Coco, CEO and business owner, tax professional, an IRS certified acceptance agent, and a 2018 SBA Minority of the Year. And also, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful information that you provide our accountant, Mr. Juan Turribiartes, our tax professional, payroll, and bookkeeping expert, our PPP and EIDL navigator as well. So guys, thank you for this an hour of presentation. Really do hope that we provide you a valuable information. Again, I'm Christopher, and we have our accountant Juan. Thank you, Mr. Bill, Miss Helen, for giving this opportunity. Again, guys, thank you, because your success is our business. Stay safe.